Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to episode 3 of the No Score Review Show. I'm your host, Nick, and today we are reviewing The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, the latest Amazon Prime television show. And I am joined today by my friend Danny. Danny, how's it going?
Good, Nicholas.
Excellent. Not too good though, right? Because spoiler alert, me and Danny weren't huge fans of Rings of Power. We can just jump right into our general thoughts of the show. Danny, do you want to let the people know what you thought?
Sure thing, Nikolaj. How do you review a pile of shit, basically? Uh, in,
Oh
in
boy.
in defense to the showrunners, or in defense to the writers, after watching the final episode of Rings of Power, I skimmed over the appendices, and to adapt the appendices of the Lord of the Rings is not easy
No
whatsoever.
small feat. Yeah.
No small feat, and I believe that's the only rights that they have to adapt, right?
Right. Yeah.
Doing that, they should have taken it in a different direction.
Right.
The appendices, I don't think, has enough material for them to do what they wanted to do.
Hmm.
The appendices has a lot of material for the Numenorian kings and stuff, and to do, I don't know, what kingly drama or whatever in
Right.
Numenor. But then in terms of there's other stuff that ties in with the Lord of the Rings, but it would, if they went in that direction, like the jury, like in the movies when they're battling in Helm's Deep or whatever, or in Gondor, I mean, they're
Hmm.
battling in Gondor. There's a whole war going in the north with the dwarves and the Easterlings or whatever.
Right. Right.
And so, if that's what the appendices also describes, but if they went into that direction, it would feel like a tacked on thing.
Right.
With with this show, you can't compare it to the lore and
Hmm.
judge the adaptation of it, because they didn't adapt it whatsoever.
Right.
They just borrowed the names and made this random fantasy show.
Hmm.
Um, they pulled more from the movies than they did from the actual source material, which will just automatically degrade your show by one notch, because you have the original story, which is like the pinnacle, and then you have the Peter Jackson trilogy, which is like, it's close and it's like absolute perfection, but every time you adapt something, it deteriorates. And I
Hmm.
feel like this show adapted from the movie
Right.
trilogy, rather
Hmm.
than the source material.
Yeah, they wanted to adapt from what you have told me, because that's what I've really only heard about the Silmarillion and whatnot. They wanted to adapt the Silmarillion, but they had the rights only to the movies and the appendices. So they wanted to have their cake and eat it too, which is just a recipe for disaster effectively.
Yeah.
Um
If I was more enthusiastic about this show, I would do a shit ton of research, but I just don't feel I like after what I was super excited for this show.
right.
But I wanted to be careful with my expectations coming into it, right? You have
Mhm.
to, but this show just really made me depressed. Like, I'm kind of sad,
Yeah.
because you're spending $1 billion,
Yeah.
and it feels like they spent the money and they're like, okay, let's do this. Let's make a show. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Whereas the Peter Jackson trilogy, they were in pre-production for 26 months. That is unheard of for a film, right?
Yeah, just over 2 years of
Yeah,
pre-production.
yeah, and they're doing it for the whole trilogy, right? For three
Right.
movies.
Yeah.
But the show feels like, wait, they I don't know, man. Like, they
They were
start,
in pre-production for, I don't know, what, like a few months, 6 months maybe at most.
yeah, that's what it feels like. Because if
Yeah.
they were in pre-production for one does not simply adapt the second age of Middle Earth, man.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird they went in the direction they did because, like you said, like there seems to be like some stuff in the appendices that could be like relatively compelling, but they just wanted to straight out of the gate just go, let's do how the rings got made because that's what people are going to recognize, the rings, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
like you said before the podcast, right?
Hmm.
Earlier this morning, you don't want to talk about the books too much. And that's a smart thing to do because the more we talk about the actual lore, the more it's going to deteriorate the show itself because
Yeah.
like I'll
The
make
more we focus on comparing it to what it's not, then
it's not, yeah.
that's yeah.
So like yeah, so like that like takes 75% of what I had planned for this freaking podcast, but I'll
That'll be in the extended edition.
yeah, it just like the more you talk about it, the more sad you get. It's just like freaking
Yeah.
like yeah, like the freaking Elven Rings in the last episode is just so
The cherry on top.
yeah.
Cherry on the
And then
turd
this
ice cream sandwich.
this guy shows up for like 30 seconds.
Yeah, what
And,
you've seen in the trailer is what you get in the
like,
show, folks.
yeah, he's not even supposed to be there. Like this guy shows up at the beginning of the third age or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I'm really into the books, but I got better things to remember, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know
Um,
he's not anywhere near what's happening right now because
right.
he's like yeah.
But they're
He just
mishmashing everything all together to make something work.
yeah.
I won't say to make it work because
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, you kind of already touched on it, but like expectations going in, you so I hadn't really paid much attention to this show.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, as soon as I started seeing like news stories about, oh, Amazon like got the rights to Lord of the Rings and is making a Lord of the Rings thing, I was like, not that excited because I was very content with the trilogy as it was. I wasn't a huge like fan of the Hobbit movies when they came out, but I was like very content. I'm like, I don't think I really need any more Lord of the Rings stuff, honestly. Like the movies are pretty good. I'll go and read the books whenever I get the time because that like interests me. But yeah, I wasn't that like I didn't gravitate to it that much. You said
Yeah.
you were pretty amped when it first got announced.
Yeah, I was pretty excited, but yeah, I was excited and then when I heard that they're doing the second age, I was like, "Oh shit." Um but then my brother 2 weeks before the show came out, my brother said they only have the rights to the appendices of the Lord of the Rings. I was just like, were they were they withholding this information? Or like I didn't want to look into the show too much because I didn't want any spoilers. You know, I'm not going to pay attention. I'm going to
Yep.
watch it when it comes out. But when I
Hmm.
found out this, I'm just like, my automatic thought right away is going to be it's going to be fan fiction. If they're doing the second age just based off of the appendices, it's going to be fan fiction.
Right.
And then the show comes out and like it's not even fan fiction because fan fiction would be respecting the lore of whatever they're being fans of, right?
Hmm.
But then this show just does their own thing.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and like being authentic to the characters too, right? Because there's also characters that are like in well
yeah,
specifically in the movies that are from the movies that show
yeah,
up in this show, right?
yeah, yeah,
And they well Galadriel mainly feels like very different.
yeah,
Elrond, I don't know if he feels different or like he might feel different, but not like in a bad way. Like I think his
yeah,
character is relatively good, authentic to the character in the book and maybe the movies, maybe not so much, but I think he was handled better than Galadriel at the very least.
yeah. What's this? What's the actor's name in the movies? The plays Elrond.
Oh man.
The Mr. Anderson from Matrix. Is that
Yeah,
him?
uh, what's his name? Crap.
Son of a bitch. I'm
What is
terrible with
it?
names, but when it comes to characters from Lord of the Rings, I remember those names.
He played. Yeah, he's Elrond in the movies. Is come on? Is he on the first page of IMDb? No, he's not. Of course
You
not.
need you need a guy
Um.
to do Google searches.
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah.
Where is he? Hugo Weaving.
Hugo Weaving, that's it.
There we go.
Yeah, he was awesome. Compared the to no offense to the actor who played Elrond
Yeah.
in the TV show, Hugo Weaving is a
I mean, yeah.
he's amazing. But the character Elrond feels more like a bitch in the Rings of Power than in the movies. Cause like he's just like, oh no, no, don't do that.
He
No,
hasn't seen any shit yet.
no, yeah,
Elrond in the movies has seen some shit.
yeah, he's seen shit. But then in the show, he says, "I've seen shit." But the Galadriel's like, "Have you
That's
seen
true.
shit?" I've seen shit. I'm pretty sure Elrond has seen shit. His
Right.
father turned into a freaking star in the book or whatever, and they acknowledge that in the show. Like that's pretty. Think about that. Your father just goes into the sky and explodes into a ball of light. Probably he's seen some shit, man.
Yeah, you've seen some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, let's start getting into the nitty gritty, I guess. We'll do some highlights and lowlights.
Okay.
So it's going to be a very
Uh,
lopsided list. I
yeah,
can
yeah.
already tell.
Do you want to start with the highlights so we can get this out of the way? It'll take like a few couple minutes, you know.
Couple minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so we can kind of go point by point here. So, like narrative wise, I think overall that was a pretty big low light for me. The overall narrative of the show.
Yeah.
The plot was very like all over the place. It like put characters in positions um solely for the purpose of moving things forward when it did move forward. At other times and a lot of the time I found that the plot was very slow. Like if I think of like the plot with the stranger and the Harfoots, that really crept along until like the last episode is where it like really paid off.
Yeah.
Um, the plot with the like Forge Tower was kind of sidelined and was a means to get Elrond and Durin together, which like I mean, there's something to be said for that because like Elrond and Durin's stuff was like probably my favorite part of the whole show.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just like things were it was kind of like just really messy, I found, and then just didn't have a lot propelling it.
Yeah. It ain't no Batman Begins, that's for sure.
As the creators are comparing it to for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
So
yeah, like,
characters and acting, I guess, next. Unless you had any other notes you wanted to talk about the narrative.
yeah, you said like the plot like to me there was like a lot of like the you'd start out with a plot and then there'd be a narrative and the narrative would have a finish to that plot,
Okay.
but then it would become a giant plot hole. And then it's just like, what happened there? Oh, it's whatever. And then
Hmm.
it spin off to another narrative, and then to two separate plots, and
Hmm.
then narratives would spin off of those plots and then turn into plot holes. And then it's like, what happened to these things? Oh no, it's fine. So it's just like they're like they're trying to like move the story and then it just falls and then they it's like they're a group of people and then each
Hmm.
person is just falling off and
Yeah,
like
like when
lost.
you say that, that makes me think of the uh like one of the Numenor plots
Yeah,
where they're trying to get help from the Queen and get an army and ships to go back to Middle Earth
yeah,
to help defeat the uh, Sauron and his forces or whatever,
yeah,
or to help the Southlands.
yeah,
Um, so like that's like the main overarching plot of Numenor,
yeah,
and then they like finally coax the Queen into um, like helping them out, and they're on their way getting ships and everything ready and soldiers recruiting soldiers. And there's the like subplot of the like um I don't even know, the Queen's council man or whatever,
well, yeah, that
his son goes to sabotage one of the ships or like all of the ships or something,
which
so they can't leave because they are like very much opposed to helping the elves and like doing anything about that.
but
And then
that
uh
that just happens to in order to bring Isildur to Middle Earth. That's
right,
the only
yeah,
reason for that, right? Yeah,
yeah. And I mean, I guess maybe like provide a bit of conflict for the uh uh like suggestion of helping the elves, right?
yeah.
But yeah,
It has,
and then that whole thing of the Queen Council guy's son sabotaging the ships just kind of goes away. It's like it might get addressed in like season 2, but like as far as a complete season go, it's like very much left to the wayside, right?
yeah,
And that's just one example.
the show has a lot of plot holes with unnecessary conflict, like conflict. It has a lot of plot holes, and they try to create conflict to drive the tension of the show. It's like, oh no, what's going on? It doesn't do that at all. It just makes you tired, like exhausted watching it.
Hmm.
It's like, why is this guy blowing up the ship for? This and
Yeah,
that, and like yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah.
yeah. Um. Okay. Characters and acting. Want to talk about characters first?
Uh,
I'll go with like a highlight first. So I touched on it already. Durin and Elrond stuff, and Disa. I'll throw Disa in there too. They're like almost every one of their scenes was probably my absolute favorite part of the show. The chemistry between the two actors of Durin and Elrond, and I mean, and Disa really, like their scenes together were phenomenal. I'll say. Um, and we had a really nice arc of uh, Elrond coming to um, what's the dwarven place called again? Danny
Khazad-dûm,
Khazad-dûm.
Moria. It's one of those.
Yeah,
No, the Mines of Moria, Khazad-dûm.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
Khazad-dûm.
Khazad-dûm, yeah. But when Elrond gets to Khazad-dûm and Durin is very like standoffish and abrasive, right? And then they warm up to each other again. We get a bit of backstory between them, right? All those scenes are fantastic, I thought. And even like with Durin's father too, the king dwarf, I thought was really excellent. And the performances, especially Durin, he was like really good. I found the actor was really well cast. Um, I think the Harfoots were good. Like I liked the caricature of them being like the like hardy, like the nomad, like hobbit stand-in type things. And I know hobbits come from Harfoots and whatnot, but past that though, it was like not much there. Like I sympathized with the uh characters of the Harfoots and whatnot. It's just that there was almost no plot there for me to stay invested. It was like, oh, I like these characters, but like, what's going on? Like, why are we here with them, right?
Yeah, the whole Hobbit storyline was just a big waste of the audience's time, I feel.
Yeah,
Like, it didn't go like, it started
especially with the fake out at the end, right?
like,
It's like even
that
if he ended up actually being Sauron, spoiler alert, then it would have paid off more,
Yeah.
probably, right?
That whole subplot was a red herring to
Hmm.
distract the audience from that's what it's called, right? That's the term for
Yep.
it? Yeah,
Yep.
red herring.
Throw them off the scent, right?
That's the only reason that's there. And that's like and they just put hobbits there because they needed to meet a quota of having hobbits because the movies had hobbits.
Right.
The hobbits have no business in the second age, right?
Yeah.
They're all the hobbits give a shit about is staying hidden from the big folk, right?
Hmm.
And peace and quiet and good tilled earth. That's all. If a star comes out of the sky, they're booking it. Leave that
Hmm.
big ass piece of shit there. He's on his own, right? They have no, not necessary to be in the second age, and it shows by having that subplot in the show is just a fake out
Hmm.
to make you think that the Gandalf, right,
Yeah.
is Sauron.
Sauron.
That's
Yeah.
the only reason why that's there, which is pointless, and I feel kind of betrayed as a audience member. You know, it's just like, why are you wasting my time with this guy then?
Hmm.
Oh, wait a second, he's Gandalf, and like they allude to him being Gandalf
Yeah.
because he says that line. He's like, "Always follow your nose." In
Hmm.
the Fellowship of the Ring, when they go into Casa Doom, I think that's what it's called. He says to Pippin or Merry, one of the guys, he says, "Always follow your nose." Right at the end of a sentence that he says.
Hmm.
Um, they allude that to being Gandalf, but I've heard a lot of people saying that a lot of people who understand the lore are kind of choked, even if they're like trying to enjoy the show.
Hmm.
They're kind of choked by that one thing, Gandalf being there. The lore is totally different, but a lot of them are hoping that Gandalf is like who they say is Gandalf, right? They don't give a name for
No,
the
they
show.
never confirm he's Gandalf.
A lot of people are theorizing that he's going to be a blue wizard. So like
Hmm.
the writers are testing the waters of the audience, right?
Mm.
Or do they like the idea of him being Gandalf? If not, oh, then maybe we'll do a blue wizard. And the whole blue wizard thing is the smart way to go. But they allude to the stranger being Gandalf way too much
Right.
for them just to change it now, because then it'll
Yeah.
be like cheap. They'll
Right.
have to make the blue wizard a clone of Ian McKellen. Is that his name?
Yep.
Magneto. Yeah.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah, they'd have to make a clone of him because like, oh, he talks the same, has the same demeanor, has the same style about him, shit
Hmm.
like that. Like they could have done a whole. I'm not sure if the appendices talks about the Blue Wizard much. It's
Hmm.
like I think they're twins. There's two of them, Blue
Yeah, I was
Wizard.
gonna ask and confirm that. Yeah, there was two of them.
If they just came out with a series called The Blue Wizards, they would have open season on the source material. Because I don't think Tolkien talked a lot about the Blue Wizards. Because I think I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that Tolkien, all he said was the Blue Wizards go off to the east
Hmm.
to try and wrestle the Easterlings away from Sauron's grasp. Something like that.
Right.
And I think like it's very minimal what Tolkien describes, so they have open season to do a show exactly the way they want it.
Right.
And like a lot of people, they would probably end up writing a shit show compared to seeing this one, but still they wouldn't be uh, like they wouldn't be just destroying the lore, you know. And going back to uh, the actors in Elrond and Durin
Hmm.
and his wife, what's her name again?
Disa.
Disa. She's not an original character, and though the actors did a good job, they were kind. Elrond was more faithful a little bit to the character, like the
Hmm.
actor, his style and like the writing was more faithful to Elrond.
Yep.
But Durin, he has some lines that are really like kind of throw me off. It's like give it to me raw and give it to me hard, right?
Okay.
That's a very modern phrase
Hmm.
to say something like that, right? And like that's not Tolkien-esque whatsoever.
Right.
Or like
Yeah,
even
some of the lines in the dialogue, I mean really with the writing in general,
yeah,
but the dialogue, like some of the lines are like it just doesn't sound right or feel right, you know?
yeah, yeah. That subplot of Durin and Elrond has the has the character Gil Galad,
Mhm.
who is in the opening sequence of the Fellowship in the battle. It's Elrond and Gil Galad. You can see him like in. I think it's in. I'm not sure if he has more screen time in the extended cut, but in the theatrical cut, you could see an elf guy go like this with a staff, right?
Mhm.
And that's Gil Galad,
Okay.
and he has a much more. I don't remember his character too much from the books, but he has a much more prominent role, and he's one
Mhm.
of the guys who gets the rings of power, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. The
Okay.
Elven rings. It's
Yeah, yeah.
Gil-galad, Elrond, and Galadriel. Is it? No, 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 not Elrond. Some other
Yeah, it's
guy.
someone else, yeah. But
Is it?
Galadriel gets one.
No, no. Wait a second. Galadriel, Elrond. Yeah. See, I don't know. I forget. But the this elf guy gets it later. Maybe Gil-galad gets the ring,
Mhm.
and when he dies, in the opening sequence of the thing. He dies there, I think, and his ring goes to this elf guy who is on the shores of Middle Earth, and later the the wizards come. And I don't know if that elf guy gives Gandalf the elven ring of power or something. I forget.
Mm.
Yeah, I forget who gets the rings of power, but obviously Galadriel has one, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure if yeah. And
It
then
wouldn't surprise me though if uh the three elves at the end are just the ones who keep the rings
yeah,
in the show, right?
yeah,
Galadriel, Elrond, and Celebrimbor.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Also,
Speaking of Galadriel, we can kind of touch on
well,
her a little
one
bit.
more thing. Hold
Oh,
on.
one more thing. Oh, Danny, you have something to say? Okay.
One more thing. Disa, her last scene in the show, she starts talking like an evil person, right? Do you remember that?
Uh,
She's like, "You and me, we're gonna rule this kingdom," right?
I didn't get that vibe. I
Yeah,
just like I got the vibe of like your dad will be gone one day, and me and you will be able to like do what we want.
right.
You know,
Okay.
I didn't get the like evil vibe, but
Okay. I kind of got the evil vibe, but I'd
okay,
have to like listening to what you have to say. I need to rewatch it now, but
right.
I kind of got the evil vibe, and she would have been a much better Sauron than Halbrand.
Oh whoa,
Because it's
I
like
didn't even think about that.
because like I was thinking about her being Sauron. It's just like is she like the way the show was going is just like oh is she Sauron because she started talking evil like is she corrupted? Is Sauron more than one person? It can't be Halbrand. It's too it's so he's there since the
Too
beginning.
easy.
Yeah, it's too easy. It's too on the nose kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? But whatever.
Um. So
Galadriel.
yeah, Galadriel. I would say that's probably one of the bigger uh lowlights. She um like even like taking out the adaptation of it all and the authenticity of it, she
Yeah,
just felt the way they wrote her character felt very like she was very much just very headstrong, very abrasive,
yeah,
and it was always about her quest first. She didn't care if she was talking to the queen of Numenor. She wanted to have ships and an army to come help because her thing mattered and everyone should believe her. That the way they wrote her just felt very like I I don't know that I ever really sympathized with her
yeah.
at all. She just felt like okay, Galadriel's doing her thing again of she has unfinished business with Sauron, right?
Yeah.
And that it was very felt very like one note. She felt like a very static character.
Yeah.
So it was very. I didn't sense much change from her ever. There was like a glint of it towards the end, and in that like last episode of like letting go of her brother's dagger, right? And
Yeah.
like the symbolism behind that, there was like some semblance of like change there or like letting go. But I mean, like, there, we also in the same episode got confirmation that Sauron's around a lot and alive. So it's like, okay, well, then she was kind of right still. So she still needs to go kill him and everything, right? Or
Yeah.
try to, you know? But yeah, and like I think Morfred Clark, I think her name is, the actress who played Galadriel. I think like she did as good a job as she could playing that type of character. And like it's not like we can't have characters who are headstrong and abrasive and like want to get what they want.
Yeah.
It's just there also didn't feel like there was much change, right? Danny, you have something to say?
I feel that, like, in defense of the actress, she could have gotten better direction because she felt very stale a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Sure.
her reactions and stuff, very, like you said, abrasive, and her face kind of felt dead most of the
Mm-hmm.
time. When this character has been in the light of the two trees of Valinor, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's seen shit, like
Yeah,
she says,
she
right?
says the line, "You have not seen what I have seen."
Yeah, her hair glows with the light of the two trees, right? That's why
Yeah,
Gimli in the movies, in the extended edition, anyways, wants a lock of her hair because
yeah.
she's glowing, and she should have more compassion, more insight, more deep, meaningful thought in her expressions, instead
Mm-hmm.
of just like dead death stares and you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
What's the term? Uh, oh man, it's like not sulking or pondering. Uh, I don't remember the term, but she just does that a lot,
Yeah.
where she's just like very like straight
Brooding.
faced and yeah,
She's like,
brooding. That's the word. Yeah, she looks
yeah,
just very brooding all the time.
yeah,
It's
she
like,
does that. Yeah. So like she's a compassionate person with deep understanding. She's like she's pretty much a goddess, right? And
yeah,
like, what's the first thing that comes to mind for me, anyways, when I think of a goddess is like a Michelangelo statue of a lady, with like you can see the sadness in her face that
hmm
she was deceived by Sauron. Not she wouldn't be having a yelling match with Sauron. She would be like, "How was I deceived?" And start
hmm
tearing up or whatever. But
yeah.
they need her to be
Um,
more strong, I guess.
yeah, and there were glints of like um some like range, I guess, but there just wasn't enough, I don't think, for me to really sympathize with her.
Yeah,
And I mean, that was just the case with a lot of the characters. We didn't get a ton. Like I sympathized with like uh the stranger and whatever her name was, the main Harfoot that we are with the whole time.
female Frodo,
Yeah, Froda.
Froda, and then
um, like
uh,
I sympathized with them, but there just was no plot there that was propelling fast enough for me to like care enough at a given time what was
yeah,
going on. And then like Elrond and Durin Disa were the main uh intrigue, I guess.
yeah.
I didn't mind what was uh the black elf's name?
Oh, the old guy with the book.
Erondir. Not the old guy with the book. The like the
Oh,
elf ranger.
oh, the elf guy. Yeah, I forget his
Yeah,
name. He's a made up character.
Erondir.
Arondir.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I liked him for the most part. Um, but like he was still kind of also in that vein of like looked very brooding all the time. He also didn't have that many lines of dialogue, I don't think, in his scenes.
Yeah, see,
But he was really cool. Like a lot of his action and stunts and stuff were pretty cool.
see,
But
this is what the show does. Is it's like, oh, this Aaron Deer guy, he started off strong, but then he kind of fell to the wayside a little bit, and we don't hear of him. It's like you do like that. This is how people talk about these characters. There's no character arcs. It's just like,
yeah,
oh, that Disa lady, she was pretty. She was freaking awesome. She was like, I would love to see more of her, but then she was too busy in the dwarven kitchen. But she was smithing there in one scene for a second. She was
right.
making some stuff, and then she said some evil shit at the end. It's like that's all it is. It's just these little things. There's no
Yeah.
character arcs. The that ranger guy, Aaron Deer,
Hmm.
he started off really strong, probably the most interesting, and then he falls to the wayside to
Yeah. In
like as
service of other stuff.
in service of something shittier.
Yeah.
Like it, yeah, like it felt like the story couldn't handle the complexity of all these multiple plot lines.
Yeah, because like in um the movies, to compare them to the movies,
Yes.
you still get all these different storylines, but they're also in like clusters more of the time, right? Like you have the Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli cluster, you have Frodo and Sam, you have Merry and Pippin, and then Gandalf kind of bounces all over, right? And you keep those clusters for like Two Towers and Return of the King, and then sometimes you bring them together for like big moments and whatnot, but then you like will separate them again, right?
Mhm.
It was like you have Galadriel and Halbrand, and then they kind of dot all throughout, except for like the Stranger and the Harfoots. Um, and then we only really get glimpses of, or the like clusters we get. They are in service. They only service a tiny part, right?
Mhm.
Like the whole Elrond Durin stuff is literally in service of Mithril, I think, is pretty much the only thing, right?
Yeah.
And that is until like the last episode where it's like, and then Halbrand is like, oh, what if you use Mithril?
Yeah.
Or like, what if you used an alloy or whatever with the Mithril to help it,
Yeah.
right? And
This
it's like
this is supposed to be a
that whole Elrond Durin thing is
yeah.
just on its own
Yeah.
thing, right? And I mean, like that might come up more in season 2 or whatever, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Celebrimbor needs to create a tower, a smithing tower. So that's the excuse for Elrond to speak with Durin and start that. And then the
Mhm.
smithing tower is gone. You
Yep.
can there's one scene of them building it,
Yep.
and then that's it.
Hmm.
Uh, and then like the only reason that was there is for these two guys to talk, and then these guys talk, and the reason for them to talk was to get the Mithril, and then as soon as we get the Mithril, then they're like things just fall apart from there, right?
Yep.
It's just
Yeah, the writing. So the next point on the list, the writing is really
yeah,
biggest weakness to the show,
yeah,
which is its lifeblood, really, right?
yeah.
It's just
Every, every
very like stitched together.
yeah, everything about this show is like well, not everything, but the look of the show, the production design, the cinematography, the visual effects, the special effects, it's all beautiful.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, it's all beautiful in the style that they envisioned. It's beautiful, but all that hard work from those thousands of crew members is in service to the story. That's the reason why it's there. That's
Hmm.
the only reason why these people are working on it. and the
Mhm.
story isn't even there.
Mhm.
So it's just this beautiful hollow husk of a TV series.
Yeah.
All it is, it's a beautiful hollow husk. It
Yeah.
looks fascinating,
Mhm.
and like you can barely watch this show with your brain off. It's just like, ooh, and then you get lost. Like, oh yeah, oh wow, it's beautiful. Absolutely stunning show.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic production quality.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show without limitations is the death to creativity, man. Like Orson
Mhm.
Welles said, or whoever. It's like, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
got $1 billion, make a show. Wow, it looks amazing, but
Yeah.
it sucks.
What was it about?
Yeah,
I don't really know.
yeah, exactly. Like
Maybe
it's
some rings in the end,
you have
but
all this beautiful imagery, right? Um, Alfred Hitchcock, one of his things was like you you have four spectacular scenes and you stitch them together with a little bit of story, right? That was his thing. This show has spectacular scenes, poorly executed,
Mhm.
but they look beautiful, right? How we got there is meaningless.
Mhm.
How we got to the Battle of the Southlands is kind of meaningless. As soon as it's over, like you have a battle, the battle's okay. Uh, there's a lot of problems with it. If you analyze it, there's so many problems.
Mhm.
It's exciting. It looks great, fantastic, right? But then it's like there's no meaning behind that battle, right?
Mhm.
You don't feel anything for the battle. You don't. There's no anticipation for the battle. There's no fear at the outcome of the battle. It's just a battle, and it
Yeah.
looks awesome. The You were talking about highlights for you of the show. I didn't say my highlight of the show.
Okay.
And I only have one highlight of the show. The production design is beautiful, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all good, but I'm watching it for the story, and the story's not there. But the one highlight where I was just like, this was that guy in the battle falling off of the roof. That stunt guy, that was the highlight of the show. That's it. Fantastic.
Fully committed to
Fully
just
committed.
eating crap.
He just took the arrow, went dead, and just freaking slid
Yeah.
down the thing. And
Give that man an Emmy.
yeah, that guy, that was the highlight of the show. Saying that was the highlight of the show is
A low
like
bar.
the stunt guy. The stunt
Yeah.
guy was the best part of the show, and his job is to take the fall from just take a fall, and he had the best he had the best thing. Yeah.
Um. All right. So, what do you think the creator's goal was, and do you think they achieved this goal?
I don't know what they were trying to achieve. I don't know what their goal was. Amazon had a goal, and that goal was viewership.
Hmm.
And I don't know if I don't think they achieved it. I think they're in trouble because things aren't looking good. The reviews when the show came out started bringing down the average, and they closed it off. Right,
Hmm.
so the score that we see isn't 100% accurate.
Right.
So I think they're in trouble, and they're trying to hide it because like anybody with two brain cells can see that this is a shit show. But like kids would probably enjoy it. But I think if a kid was paying attention to it, like a 5-year-old or something, they were watching this show, they'd be sitting there with their mouths open, but then they would end up playing with their toys and walk away, right? That's
Mm.
kind of how I feel this show would be like for someone who isn't paying too much attention into it, right?
Mhm.
Just taking it at face value. I don't think it can even grab a child's attention too much. Um, like we're not children, and this show doesn't feel like it's geared towards children. It's like, who are they making it for?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Were they
like
making it for?
yeah, like I can watch Clone Wars, and I completely get that it's made for children, but Jesus Christ, I'm watching that show and I'm really into it. Like Wally and stuff, right? It's geared towards children, and I love that
Really
movie.
compelling storytelling, right?
Yeah, really compelling
Yep.
storytelling. But then this show, it's like a 5-year-old wouldn't even enjoy it.
Yep.
Where did we start off with this one? This what was their goal to achieve? Yeah, I don't know,
Cool. Yep.
man. Yeah,
Yeah, I think the cynic in me is like Amazon buys the rights to Lord of the Rings, and they're like, okay, we got the rights, we got to make our investment back. Go make a show. We'll pay whatever you want. We just want to slap Lord of the Rings on the title, and that'll drive up viewership enough to make our sales back or whatever, right?
and more Prime members.
More Prime members, exactly. Yeah.
That's all it is. It's a
So
money grab.
yeah, it they maybe tried to get the rights to like Silmarillion. Um, they failed, and they're like, "Screw it, we're gonna do it anyway with
Yeah,
less resources,
yeah.
not less money, less resources."
In terms of
Um,
source material,
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. Uh, do you think you'll rewatch it?
before this podcast, like I wanted to prepare myself, and I tried to rewatch it. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. It was too. I was kind of. I'm devastated by this show,
Yeah.
man.
Do you think you'll check out season two?
Of course, of course, I have to. They have a freaking Balrog in the show,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I have to see where these characters are going.
Hmm.
Um, of course, yeah, I have to watch it. Like it's going to be
And
torture,
like to
though.
to their like to give the benefit of the doubt, some like TV shows start off rocky in their first season, right? And then they got like exponentially better in later seasons. So we can only hope it gets better from here, right?
Yeah,
We don't want things to be bad. We want them to be good.
yeah,
So fingers crossed.
yeah. I don't know. They kind of butchered it already. Because like they fit like okay, the whole show is about the rings of power, and then the last episode for like 5 minutes they have the rings of power, right?
Hmm.
For me, out of the whole entire season, it felt like 7 episodes of like I'm thinking about it right now. It feels like 7 blurry episodes with like a little bit with a guy falling off a roof. That's what I can remember. A guy falling
Yeah.
off a roof.
That's your peak.
Yeah, that's my peak.
Everything was downhill after that.
Yeah, and then the last episode, I feel, is the strongest episode. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense, but they got okay. We got a story thing going. We got okay. These characters are meeting up. They're talking. We're having meaningful conversations. Things are starting to roll. Starting to roll. Rings of power. Okay, finished. It's just
Right.
like it was like this stagnant line, and
Right.
then all of a sudden, episode 8, we're on a roll. Oh, it's like they
Yeah.
should have had this shit in the beginning,
Right.
and take it away from us. Oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know. The have okay, lore wise, having the 3 elven rings is pretty bullshit. Sauron doesn't get involved with the 3 elven rings, but how Celebrimbor was able to make the 3 elven rings was from Sauron's teachings,
Hmm.
and they don't know he was Sauron when Celebrimbor was learning this stuff, the
Right.
creating the rings of power.
Hmm.
All the mithril stuff is all made up. Um, for Mithril to be the source of the rings of power means that Frodo, the source of power for the rings, right? Means that Frodo in the Fellowship, when he gets the vest of Mithril, he's
Hmm.
like freaking Thanos with the power glove, right? He can turn Sauron, he can destroy him with a snap.
Yeah.
Then, like he's all powerful. He's got the most Mithril in Middle Earth, the freaking fleece or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like if you're pulling from the movie and not from the books, you can't make Mithril super powerful because Frodo can just waltz into Mordor and just take arrows like
Yeah.
nobody's business because he's got this mineral that was powered by a Silmaril that
Yeah.
the Dark Lord Morgoth who is more powerful than Sauron, had the three Silmarils on his crown and was like the ruler of Middle Earth. And he
Mhm.
was like this guy like this, right? So Frodo's got this thing just imbued with the essence of a Silmaril covering his body. He can just waltz right into Mordor, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever. Mount Doom. And he
Mhm.
can throw himself with the ring on his chest into the lava and he'd be impenetrable. And then he would just like rise up with the tide of lava.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's so dumb. Um,
The thing I remembered when you were on your Mithril rant was that the writers seem to have structured the show in a way that drove up viewer interest by making a lot of mysteries, right? And
yeah,
then where a lot of the payoff didn't come was a lot of these mysteries not being paid off, right? Or being red herrings, like the stranger not being Sauron, right?
yeah,
Um, so I think that was probably also another large detriment is like having all these like mystery boxes scattered throughout the show, but then it's like, oh, there's nothing in here, nothing in here. Oh, there's something in here, nothing in here, nothing in here, right? And then it's like we're at the end. Oh, it's Sauron, and we're done.
yeah. Um, yeah, but you have to have a arc for the season, right? You have to have some
Yeah,
sort of finish and then a branching narrative to carry on.
exactly. Mystery boxes and like uh, prolonged mystery isn't going to keep the viewers engaged, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like a lot of the direction they were trying to push the story was just these coincidences. You know, this guy was here at the right time to do this thing. That's how
Hmm.
it felt like. The one big thing about this show is that the characters would do something and there would be no consequences
Mm,
for what they did. So Isildur would save this guy who blew up the ship of Numenor, right? He can go to jail, he'd probably get hanged,
hmm.
and he saves him and lies. And there's no consequence for that. He just ended up being able to go to Middle Earth like he wanted, right?
Yeah.
Where's the consequence of him lying to his father, right? The few who supposedly should be the future king of Numenor, right?
Hmm.
Spoiler. Um, but they pulled
Well,
his
and
name.
why did he save that guy sabotaging? I mean, like he stopped that dude from
Yeah,
sabotaging, but then he also saves him. So it's like, I mean, I guess you're a good guy and everything, but then
yeah,
you also cover his ass when
yeah,
you pulled the shore. So like, but why, right?
yeah,
And then we never know.
yeah. And like, there's so many characters in the whole. Like, that's just one thing. We can spend hours and hours.
Yeah.
I have to reanalyze the show and pick out a thing, but it's just multiple characters have so many actions without any consequences.
Hmm.
So this show is clearly Amazon's go at a Game of Thrones, right? And so let's look. You were saying first season of a TV series, this and that. They're trying to leave it open ended. Let's look at Game of Thrones first season. Eddard, Ned Stark, gets
Hmm.
his freaking head cut off because he wanted to accuse the queen of adultery, right? Or what is
Right.
it? Um, Incest, right?
Yeah.
He gets his freaking head cut off. There's a consequence for your actions, Ned. And he was trying to be like, he's one of the most honorable men in the whole entire show, right? Ned
Hmm.
Stark, the most honorable. And the one time he tries to save his ass and say, I lied, he gets his head cut off. There's a consequence for his actions, right?
Hmm.
And that show has an arc and it finishes. Yeah, let's say like that's the main arc, right? The incest and uh, um, the king guy Baratheon,
Hmm.
he dies, and Ned wants to give the rightful throne, but then you have the result of that arc is the show ending with um, what's the guy's name? The the guy, the king, Joffrey.
Joffrey, yeah.
The story arc ends with the bad guy winning, and
Mhm.
that's the end of season one, right? And there's multiple other subplots here and there. Rob, oh, we're gonna go to war, right? At
Mhm.
the end of season one, that's season two. That's something you got to look forward to the next season. The bad guy is the king. The Sansa is stuck in King's Landing. Arya runs away from all the commotion of that arc, right?
Mhm.
It's an action that happens, um, a consequence of the main action develops into
Multiple
uh,
storylines.
multiple storylines and consequences for these characters and decisions that they have to make.
Mhm.
Stanza is like, my father was a liar, right? And
Mhm.
like a turncloak or whatever they call it. So she has
Yeah.
to keep quiet and pretty. That's that her choice that she made in order not to die. And they
Yeah.
follow that character, and was it Jamie? Was it Jamie fights Ned? Oh no, I'm thinking of season two. Anyways, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like these actions have consequences. In this show, actions have no consequences.
Right.
Like Galadriel should have just freaking. She should just ride into Mordor, hunt down Sauron, and stab him in the back.
Mhm.
Because we all know she's going to survive, right? All her actions don't have consequences. All these characters' actions don't have consequences. It makes it very unbelievable.
Yeah, it is like I think something we have to remember though is like Game of Thrones was like George R. R. Martin writing Lord of the Rings, but having characters actually get their comeuppance for
True.
the decisions they make, right?
Yeah.
Like, so Lord of the Rings is way more about not that it can't have like these really gray characters, but I think it's way more about like good versus evil, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Whereas Game of
but you can still write that in a way where you're not giving your characters plot armor in a cheap way, right?
Hmm.
Or like having characters make uh like dumb decisions too, right? Or um yeah, just like there's still a way. It's like they just didn't come through with it, right? They didn't execute it properly,
yeah.
I think is the main thing.
With Game of Thrones, there's a lot more gray, like you said, not so black and white, and that's how George Martin wanted it, right? Lord of the Rings is very much a fantasy, and
Mhm.
it was in its intention was an escape from reality, right?
Right.
From the very beginning. But um, characters have, uh,
Dimension.
the characters in the Lord of the Rings do stuff, and there's consequences for that stuff. And they have dimension. That's another thing. There's I can't tell you Albrand. I can't tell you what his interests are. Like he's very like all these characters are very two dimensional. You can't you can't describe what he does on his off time. Does he like to go play darts with the other elves?
I
You know?
so like not I the thing I remember about Halbrand, this kind of just brings up a different thing though, is like the thing with Halbrand initially was actually kind of intriguing of the um stranded stranger uh turned reluctant king turned like triumphant leader, right?
Did I
King of the
say Albrand?
Southlands. Yeah, who did you mean?
I meant the Arendir guy, the black
Oh, okay.
elf guy. Yeah, but yeah, keep on going with Halbrand.
Yeah, like that arc was interesting, right? It's like it was kind of like an Aragorn um copy, not like not to cheapen it or anything. But that was like relatively compelling, right? See
Yeah.
Halbrand change from this like guy who wants nothing to do with society and like just turn his back on his past, right? But
Yeah.
then we get that like flip in the last episode. So then like all of that is kind of thrown to the wayside. I don't know how much of that is going to hold up on like a second viewing or whatever,
Yeah.
but
Well, now Sauron is the next Tony Soprano.
no, the next Walter White.
Oh
He's
yeah,
supposed
Walter
to be
White.
like Walter White.
He's gonna be like all the awesome villains of TV history. He's
All
gonna
the
be,
awesome anti-heroes.
yeah, all the awesome anti-heroes because we want him to be likable to the audience. Then season 2 is gonna be like the Dark Knight, whereas season 1 is like Batman Begins. What kind of
um,
people say that?
I don't know.
How dare you disrespect Breaking Bad and Sopranos and
And the Dark Knight.
Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy?
Okay, we're gonna start wrapping it up here.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
I
I'm not
know,
yet.
I know. You're not gonna be able to say like 2 to 3 pros. Um, so try to think of at least one pro and 2 cons for the
One
show.
pro and two cons.
At least one.
The guy falling off the roof. The
Okay,
stunt,
maybe what one other one?
a pro of the show.
Yeah.
The character names are awesome for the ones that they didn't make up. Elrond, Gil-galad. Oh, I also wanted to correct some before we go further.
Sure.
Uh, the three I was trying to figure out who were the three elves that get the rings of power.
Mm.
Galadriel gets one,
Yeah.
and Gil-galad gets two rings of power.
Oh.
And when he dies, at the beginning of the Third Age, which is the battle against Sauron, when Isildur cuts the ring from his
Yep.
hand,
Hmm.
Gil-galad dies in that battle, and he entrusts the two rings of power to Elrond and Círdan or whatever.
Okay.
So yeah, so Gil-galad gets two, and Galadriel has one, and then when he dies, Elrond gets the other ring, and then
Gotcha.
Sinrad, some other elf guy, I don't have no idea who he is.
Yeah.
He gets the other ring, and then Sinrad gives it to Gandalf later, and Gandalf has a movie trilogy.
Gotcha.
Two pros. You can't have two pros in this show. One pro, two cons. What kind of pro can it be other than the guy falling off the roof?
I don't know. The art
Oh,
direction or the like production.
the
What were you
the,
gonna say?
the orcs,
Okay.
phenomenal. I love the makeup. The special effects that they
Mhm.
did was, I would have to say, not all of it. The Peter Jackson trilogy, Lord of the Rings trilogy. The orcs felt like they were more consistent in terms of the quality, whereas
Mhm.
the show there was like a lot of like awesome orcs,
Mhm.
but a couple of them felt out of place here and there.
Right.
But I'd say
Maybe a couple of them felt like they should have been background orcs rather than foreground orcs or
yeah,
something.
and they ended up in the foreground. Like
Yeah.
there was like one orc where like they probably swapped his mouth with a CGI mouth or something.
Right.
Kind of like, whereas the Peter Jackson trilogy, it's all, they're all wearing, and probably the Rings of Power too. But they
Yeah.
spent 26 months getting shit ready, and then
Yeah.
two cons of the show.
Yeah. What
Um,
were like your two biggest cons you
two
took
biggest
away?
cons. So the big one is not following the source material. If they
Mm.
followed it word for word, well, not word for word, but they took this plot point and then somehow tried to tie it with that one, like they just follow it, man.
Hmm.
They would have had a far better show because it's already written, right? It's
Right.
there. It's a proof of concept that is working and selling how many decades? People still, they buy edition after edition. I have 3 editions of the Lord of the Rings, right? It's like it works. It just works. Follow it. Add your own twist to it, but don't add a twist to where Sauron loves Galadriel.
Right.
I love how we keep on ranting, but like there's still the whole Halbrand thing. Like we didn't really touch on it. You touched on it a little bit, but there's like a whole disconnect from the actual character in the books and shit. Even the character, you don't meet him in the Lord of the Rings, but it's an extreme disconnect from the movies even.
Right.
Yeah. And then another con is just the um I have no idea, man. There's like way too many. The big one is not following the source material or like not even trying. The second big con, I don't know. Uh yeah, I have no
Writing
idea.
overall.
Yeah, you could say the writing. Like even taking out all the fantasy, the all the Lord of the Rings names, replacing Elrond with Elfman 1
Right.
in Dungeons and Dragons lore or whatever.
Yeah.
It still would have been garbage of a show, right?
Mm.
It's like, oh, this guy gets washed up.
Right.
Galadriel jumps off a boat. Elf lady jump off boat. Find guy on raft.
Yeah.
Pick up by man. Take to kingdom. Guy on raft. Big bad. You know, it's like I don't know. It's like the
um,
worst. Like it's the worst. I and like the guy
Danny
who
is depressed, folks.
yeah, the guy who picks up Galadriel on the boat in like episode at the end of episode 2 or whatever,
Yeah, the
he
captain.
regrets it later, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I should because his son is dead, right? He thinks his
Mhm.
son is dead. I should have never have picked like the turn of some of these characters from being from helping the elf lady to just freaking hating her is like too abrupt, right? There's
Right.
no thought in it. It's just son dead, never help elf, right?
Yeah.
It's so it's like that with
Especially
everything.
when he like his name is Elvish, right? Like he has like Elvish heritage and stuff, I
Yeah,
think.
he speaks elf,
Yeah.
and he's talking to a lady of what's it called, Valinor or whatever.
Mhm.
She comes from the freaking god heaven, Middle
Yeah.
Earth's heaven or something. She comes from
Yeah.
there. She's practically an angel.
Mhm.
Should never have saved this bitch. It's like, what are you doing, man? What are you thinking?
um so I think my pros and cons, uh my big pro I think is the chemistry between Elrond, Durin, and Disa. I really
Uh,
like those scenes. Another pro, I would say, you can wait your turn, Danny. Um, Another pro would probably be, I guess, a lot of the action sequences, while uh, like maybe they weren't executed well from like a writing standpoint. They were just executed well from a like scope standpoint, I guess. Like they felt really well executed in terms of what it was, right? Like the village battle was really cool with the Numenorian soldiers showing up. The tower, the watchtower scene was really cool with Arondir like blowing it up and everything. The visual of Mount Doom erupting was cool. Uh, but yeah, then like the biggest con I think for me would be just the writing as well. It's just there was a large number of uh, like um, not sympathetic characters, and then where there were sympathetic characters, there was either like almost no plot happening, or it was just in service to a tiny piece of the overarching plot. Um, so yeah, if they can improve those things in the future, giving some dimension to Galadriel in the future, and having a better overall focus for season two, that
Yeah.
would be great.
Um, I have a con
Hmm.
in terms of the writing. To elaborate more on my con of writing,
Sure.
um, I have it written down here. There's no journey in any of it. So, like in the show, these characters are like the plots or the subplots, every little thing. They start a journey and then they end up at a destination.
Hmm.
What makes the destination meaningful is the journey that they had to get there, which the show cuts out completely. So you
Right.
have character, we need to get here, and then character, we are here. Okay, now that we are here, let us do the thing that we want to get here for. You right?
Hmm.
There's no uh, there's no trials and tribulations to get to where they need to be. Right?
Hmm.
To build the character, to understand the character, to elaborate on the character, to give meaning and three-dimensional understanding to that character. There's none
Yeah.
of that. It's a
Yeah.
con.
Um, so who would, if you were to recommend this show to somebody, who would you recommend it to, if anyone?
If I were to recommend this show,
Yeah,
you don't need to follow the script like to the like
to the T.
yeah, to the T. You don't need to follow the script.
Why not? It gets the point across. Who would you recommend it to?
I would. I wouldn't recommend. Like, if someone asked me, "What do you think about Rings of Power?" I'd say it's shit. Um, give it a go. You might a whole like. I'm kind of jealous of people who do enjoy it. I'm not gonna attack them.
Yeah.
Like, we're just talking about our opinions.
Hmm.
Whoever is listening to this, if you enjoy the show, I am jealous of you.
Yeah.
Like, literally. But if you enjoy this show, have you seen Lawrence of Arabia? That's a real movie. A lot of these people who enjoy certain shows, I've noticed, kind of don't pay attention too much to when they're watching shows.
Hmm.
Or like it's hard to understand what they mean by enjoying the show, right?
Hmm.
Where like
Yeah.
you'll ask them,
Some
"Oh,
for some people, it probably was enough. That was like, oh, that was a fantasy adventure. Had a variety of characters,
yeah."
a
Even
couple cool action sequences.
yeah,
Yeah, it was all right.
even those excuse me, even those people who enjoy the show will forget about it until the next season comes up.
Hmm.
Did you watch Rings of Power? Oh yeah, yeah. I watched Rings of Power. It's good. It was good.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a show that I would um, rewatch the first season before season two comes out. You know.
It's
Um,
it's not a show that makes you want to go out and buy the book and read the book and in anticipation for the second season, right?
right.
It's like, oh man, I gotta figure out this shit. I gotta go on YouTube lore
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah, I would say I'd probably recommend it. I definitely don't think I'd recommend it to anyone who is a big Lord of the Rings fan and a big
No,
Lord of the Rings book fan,
no
especially.
way. No
If
way.
you liked the movies, um, but aren't like a diehard Lord of the Rings fan, I would say check it out if you've got nothing else to watch, and if you haven't seen like Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon already.
House of the Dragon came is coming out with this show, and there's a scene of an old guy walking to a chair, and it has more deep, meaningful impact than the whole entire Lord of the Rings. It's like I was moved to tears. This old guy for like 3 freaking minutes walking to a chair, and I was just like,
Yeah.
"Ugh," you know.
Yeah.
And then this show, you have the freaking Dark Lord. Like that
Yeah.
video I showed you, if it ended in 2007, hey,
Honestly, what might have been better if they like
would have been
honestly
better.
just committed to the bit and just
Yeah.
got Linkin Park for the end of it.
Yeah, we didn't even like this. We didn't even talk about the freaking more Southlands, Mordor, like all that
Yeah.
stupid shit.
Um, yeah, I so like if you're a very very casual fan of Lord of the Rings, and if you're a casual fan of like anything fantasy, and you're hurting for some like fantasy show content, then sure,
Wheel
check
of
it out.
Time.
But
I, I
really, Wheel of Time over this.
Uh, I I haven't read the Wheel of Time books, but I really want to read them. And I
Okay,
watched the first season, and I was just like
okay,
not interested whatsoever. But it doesn't make me upset because
right.
I don't know about the lore.
Well, and
But
that's probably a large part of where people are coming from when they say they enjoy this show is like they don't have
yeah,
any inclination of like, oh, this is like so grossly inaccurate compared to the book or whatever, you know? So it's
but
like take it for what it is, right?
but when I start reading Wheel of Time, I'm gonna
You're gonna be like, oh my god, this is terrible.
I'm gonna get angry at the show. But like I watched the show and I was kind of upset. It's because like I know a little bit about Wheel of Time and there's some awesome shit in there, and it's just like
Yeah,
I'm watching the show and it's like it looks cool.
yeah. That's why it's always better to err on the side of caution, I find, of adaptations, but be it like book or video game or whatever. It's just like
Yeah.
you're more often than not, if you read the source material to an adaptation that's upcoming or experience the source material to an adaptation that's upcoming, you're more often than not going to be disappointed.
90% of 90% of the stuff that's coming out that I'm interested in that uses something old, I guess, like a
Right.
well-known thing. 90% of the stuff that they adapt now or do or whatever makes me
Mhm.
angry.
Yeah.
Not angry, angry. Like I'm not gonna yell. I'm just like, oh, like, oh, damn it.
Yeah.
And
You're frustrated.
frustrated. That's a better term. Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
get it makes me frustrated. Like if you invite me to 90% of your podcast, I'm just gonna be frustrated the whole time. Yeah,
I'll be sure to like
like
space those out so it's not a
yeah,
barrage.
you're trying to find someone who enjoyed this show, but it's just me and you here, man.
Yeah, I
There's
really
no
wanted to try and find the opposite of
yeah,
Danny, and I
there's
didn't
no
have anyone on the docket, so
it's
it's just
impossible.
us. Yep. And I mean, hey, sometimes shows are going to be bad, and like people are just going to largely not like them. So yeah, but
I I watched Grey's Anatomy recently. It's way better than
okay, I think that's a great place for this episode to end.
No, we're
um,
not done here. We're still
Danny,
recording the extended edition of
no, no,
the
no, no, no.
with
I think
it's
this is a great spot to end.
Friday night, man.
Um,
I haven't
do
even
you
compared.
have
Hold on, let me get the book. I'm gonna get the
do you have any yeah, I'm guessing you probably don't have any plugs, but do you have any sort of recommendations for the audience, be it like a book, TV show, or a movie or
um,
anything?
my brother put it perfectly. Uh, the Rings of Power is disappointing, but the true story is written. Go read the books.
Here you go.
Um, I'm currently reading the History of Middle Earth, which is
Hmm.
like I have the collector edition, 3 volumes, 5,000 pages. Luckily, they luckily they separate it into books. So in between books, I go back to the History of Middle Earth and I go through it.
Cool.
But like read the Silmarillion. If you are interested in the Rings of Power and you start reading the books, you're gonna ruin the show for yourself because it's just a whole nother
Just
level.
as a heads up.
And then also Pilsner Old Style.
There
It's
we
a
go. There's
beer.
the after hours, not a
Yeah,
sponsorship.
not a sponsor. Highly
Um,
recommended though.
Excellent. Yeah, go check out the books if this at all interested you, or if you are just a diehard Lord of the Rings fan and you want to ruin Rings of Power for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, one thing that frustrates me about this show is that they're calling it the Lord of the Rings, the
Yeah.
Rings of
Well,
Power.
that's the cynic in me is just
Yeah,
that's brand
it,
marketing, right?
yeah,
It's
it's just brand.
recognizable.
We need hobbits in there. We need a just a wizard in there. We need a
Balrog.
Balrog in there.
Yeah.
Those three
Well,
things have nothing to do in this timeline at this point. But then I think it's Durin. Durin the Fourth is the Durin in the show. Like they just call themselves Durin.
mm.
Dwarves, am I right? Durin the Fourth is the kid, is the son in the show. Durin the Sixth in the novels is the guy who encounters the Balrog.
Mm. Interesting.
Um, so this show is really condensing the time frame.
Mm.
The Balrog, I think, shows up. I think he shows up in like the beginning of the Third Age, maybe something like that.
Mm.
So after like when the Ring of Power is lost and Gollum picks it up after a
Yeah.
thousand years, that's when the Balrog shows up, something like that,
Mm.
around there. So they're really condensing it. Two generations of dwarf kings are
Yeah.
gone. They condensed it here. They took the Ring of Power story arc and they put it here. Um, Sauron is supposed to come to the elves as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, which
Mm.
is in the Silmarillion. So they only allude to it in the show as here's a gift.
Right.
Have you ever heard of boiling an egg? You know, it's like shit like that. Um, yeah, it's so
All right.
disappointing. Yeah, but like it takes Sauron like 100 years to get the rings of power made, and then this and that.
Right. All right. Well, on that lovely note, we'll leave it here for this episode of the No Score Review Show.
Um,
Oh,
couple other
Danny.
recommendations: Lawrence of Arabia, True Lies.
Right. Yep. That's
Look at
mostly for me, audience. That's not just for the audience. That's a reminder to me. Danny
yeah,
keeps harassing me about it.
watch those. I can't believe you haven't watched True Lies, man. I can't believe you haven't.
um, other plugs for me. I like as of the time of us recording this episode, I have episodes of God of War 2018 going up on my No Score Plays channel. I'm still doing the Road to Ragnarok before God of War Ragnarok comes out. So if you're into Let's Plays content, go check those out. And then I've also got the other two No Score review shows up on my main channel, No Score. If you want to go check those out, I will also be doing a review show for She-Hulk and House of the Dragon, I think, coming up. Danny, you have something to say?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Uh, I never post anything.
Oh, okay. Just follow him. He likes to see that number go up.
Invite me as a friend on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
I'll
There's another
probably
one.
decline.
Probably
Maybe
decline. Yeah. You just want to see people
I
adding
want
you,
to.
right?
I want to get
Yeah.
that plug in there.
There you go.
You
Okay.
never know.
Thank you so much, Danny, for joining me on this episode.
When's the next one?
I'll take that as a good sign. You want to come back?
Oh yeah, we'll do Lord of the Rings, the
There we
movie.
go.
We'll
Yes.
do the Hobbits.
Oh, wow.
We'll do season 2 of Rings of Power.
There we go.
We need to do Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is already done. You're doing more up to date stuff,
More new
right?
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So
We'll have
forget
you back on the
everything
show.
I just said. True Lies. We'll
Yeah.
have a no
Mhm.
score going back episode.
Yeah.
Go
We'll get it figured out.
no score reviews. The good stuff. True
Oh, we
Lies.
can workshop that title.
Lawrence of Arabia.
All right.
Children
Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Hustler.
Bye bye.